All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unicode's first Ask Unicode Anything event. My name is Terrell Cowieson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Unicode Consortium. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Unicode is a nonprofit standards body that ensures that everyone can communicate in their own language across more than 23 billion devices in every corner of the globe and even in space. So ahead of World Emoji Day, which is this Sunday, I'm excited for the special chat with Jennifer Daniel, who is our Emoji SubCommittee chair, and Anne Quito, the design reporter for Quartz. We hope you find this conversation shed some light on Unicode's role in the world of emoji. Many of you submitted some questions of your own, and I know Anne and Jennifer look forward to addressing some of those as well. And then finally, you'll notice the Twitter handles and hashtags, so please feel free to amplify the conversation on social. And thank you again for joining. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Anne to kick us off.
Thank you, Toril, and thank you everyone for being here. I know a lot of you are excited as I am. Again, my name is Anne Quito. I am Quartz's design reporter. Quartz, if you hadn't heard of us, is an emoji-obsessed newsroom. It's all over newsletters. We've devoted about 118 articles, maybe 2 more this week, so far, and often use emoji as a journalistic tool to explain the economy to a global audience. I'm thrilled for this singular chance to speak to Jennifer Daniel herself, chair of Unicode's Emoji SubCommittee for this first ever AMA. We have just met, and I don't think she knows this, but I am a longtime fan and admirer of Jennifer's work and writing. She's a designer at Google these days, but previously a graphics editor at the New York Times and Bloomberg Businessweek. Her current newsletter, Did Someone Say Emoji?, is to me as entertaining as it is at times poignantly philosophical. The purpose of today's AMA is to answer many burning questions about emoji and really lift the veil on what seems like what the LA Times calls a shadowy process of selecting new emoji. I know maybe you remember that article. Emojis may seem fun and cute, but the Unicode Consortium is a standards organization, and this subcommittee has a consequential role in shaping language and culture. Once as emoji is approved, maybe you know it can never be deleted. In other words, their word is final. So many questions. Jennifer, should we get into it?
That was such a lovely introduction. I really hope we can. I'm looking forward to our chat. So very much.
One day, maybe we'll meet in person. I'm calling from Brooklyn. Jennifer is traveling, so forgive any kind of tech glitches. It's part of life. My first question is maybe to the very fundamental one. What is it? So there are now 3,663 emoji to date, and more to come, I hear. Mm-hmm. How do you think about it? Is it a kind of alphabet, a lingua franca for this digital age? How do you think about emoji?
Emoji is sort of this thing that it's a different thing to different people. And that's why I think it's used so much, because it's so infinitely flexible. For some folks, it can be, they use it as a game, right? To decide okay, here is the entire plot to the Ghostbusters or Moby Dick or some, novella, literature, pop culture. That isn't the primary use of emoji. Most people use it to denote intonation, body language, eye contact, things that the words don't say, and that you don't need to put a precise word to it, which we take for granted because we do unconsciously, right? Face to face. And so emoji are that moment where you're acknowledging that someone said something, but you're clarifying how you feel about it.
I love that. And I also read that you've once described it as gesture. Can you talk about emoji as gesture?
Yeah, this is a sort of a way of thinking that I read about from Gretchen McCulloch and Lauren Gahn, who are two extraordinary linguists, and they have a fantastic podcast. I'm going to plug everybody because we work with a lot of different folks, but they have a great podcast called Enthusiasm. Highly recommend it. But they did some research around how emoji are used alongside words.
Okay.
And they find that the majority of emoji are used in that way. 80%, over 80% of emoji are used with words.
Mhm.
And in the same way that we use our, I'm doing it right now, when we use our hands when we talk, emoji are that supplemental to denote a connection with someone. It's like the reason why we laugh, right? Why, like evolutionary speaking, why do we laugh in the first place? It's to denote that I'm not threatening, that I'm your friend, that we see eye to eye on something. And gesture have lots, there's infinite ways of gesturing, I suppose, but emoji are like gesture in that gestures aren't universal. Right? Like a gesture, people gesture differently all around the world. Some mean different things in two different countries and different regions and different cultures,
Yes.
but your audience, right? Like, okay, thumbs up, you don't do in Brazil. That's not what you do there.
What is thumbs up in Brazil?
It's kind of like up yours.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean that, thumbs up isn't a legitimate gesture to other parts of the world, right? And so you got to know your audience, no matter what you're doing, whether you're talking face to face or you're talking digitally. But also people, anyways. So like I think of emoji as supplemental to the written word.
So when words fail us,
yes,
it's like
emoji. When there were only 2 emoji footprints, it was Emoji or Unicode that was carrying you.
That's right. Or if you're doubting, I wonder what they really mean. Maybe a validator.
Yeah.
I love the thumbs up emoji, but can we delve into like the other fuzzy ones that may be like, oh no, don't use that when you're here. Just a sampler. I know the clapping hands emoji we use a lot for like applause, but it could mean like, I don't know, hanky panky or making love in other countries.
What? Where does it mean hanky panky?
Google it. But I wonder if you know other of these sort of like fugitive, I kind of love it. Like an emoji or a symbol is sort of like a word without a definite definition, I guess, with like one definition, like one that like lends itself to many vis-a-vis the language and context and audience, as you say.
Yeah.
I wonder if you've encountered other sort of like sensitive emoji that we should maybe think about.
It's just that it really depends just on who you're talking to, right? Because like the clapping emoji is an interesting example, right? We've been applauding for performances at the beginning and at the end for a lot longer than we've been texting.
Yes.
So it's already existed as a formal convention in the world. And so how it's translated in a more informal slang way online is fascinating. People use the clapping emoji to denote cadence of speech, like, don't do that again, like between words, like to make a point. But you'll even see people just like in more formal, like let's say the VP of your company just did a very important talk online. You'd use the clapping emoji, right? You wouldn't use party popper. Party popper is more of an informal thing you might use if maybe it was someone's birthday. And so you use the emblems that you most commonly associate with the context that you're using. And so of course, just like any other symbol, it can be appropriated, misused, reused, remixed, and then it's flexible like words, right? Like words are fluid and ever changing, and the dictionary. Anyways, we'll get into that later, I'm sure. But like the language is really for the people and by the people, and we learn just by how people use it. And so, yeah, sure, I'm sure there's a million examples of it, but it really just depends on who you're talking to.
I love it. Like, so not country specific because we're not one thing, but really context specific, as you're saying.
Thank you. Marcel notes that I was mistaken on thumbs up. It's actually the okay symbol. Thank you. I do get those mixed up. Oh, it's somewhere else thumbs up. Thumbs up means something vulgar and somewhere else. But in the comments, Marcel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's right. Now I'm gesturing and offending everyone. Yes.
Related to this, I wanted to get into kind of like emojis that like that exist in variation in this set of 3,663. Let's just say there are clocks with many hands, but like I really wanted to delve into hearts, because if there are any sort of like romantically troubled out there, let's just discuss hearts. There is a blue heart, a red heart, a green heart, a blue. Like, first, why are there so many? What could a green heart mean, for instance? I don't know.
Oh, it can mean so many different things. How much time do we have?
Or when
really
you are, I guess, into your role, when you get this proposal, what are you thinking? Let's approve a green heart. Sure. I know that I peeked into the list of rejected hearts. I noticed that you've rejected a cyan heart, for instance. Why so? And why so many?
I don't know. I think we approved that's what passed was a light blue or cyan type heart. I think that's what just in the Emoji 15.0.
Okay.
But there's a whole strategy around color, right? Like, I mean, particularly I wasn't around for the initial set of colored hearts, so I can't, I'm less well versed in that, but I can speak to like understanding the demand for more and how they're used today and how we can make sure that they're as flexible as possible. So last year, oh wow, I can't believe it was just a year ago, we did an analysis of all the colored hearts on the color wheel and said, okay, so here's the distribution of color within within every, all the infinite ways colors can be represented in to the eye. And we found that there were two spaces there were gaps in, right? Like, so you're like, okay, we got reds, we got oranges, we got yellows, we got greens, but there's a space between blue and green that's fairly large that we have an opportunity, it's a gap to fill. And the same between purple and red, there was this whole space to be filled. And so we're like, okay, well, here's an opportunity to complete the color set. So we've added a light blue, which fills in the space between blue and green, and a space between purple and red is pink. So those are two new additions that will be in Emoji 15.0. But we also just generally looked at how language of color evolves just in languages. So like in Russian, there is multiple words for blue, I believe. I should have, let's see, I think yes, it's blue. And in Korean as well. And so we're like, okay, actually they make a distinction between a light blue and a blue in a way that the English doesn't. Okay, so like then we're able to say, okay, we can justify adding this without fear of it being terribly open-ended where people want to add a specific hex value. We can say, no, it's just the broad concept of light blue, the broad concept of pink. But to your first question about like, how is light green heart used? It's used in any way you want it to be, right? That's the best part about it, is you could be like, okay, you're in a group chat. I'm green heart. I'm green heart. And everyone knows that I'm the green heart person in the chat room. Or you can use it to say like, you don't want to use a different color. You're like, oh, a blue heart kind of means I'm sad maybe, or like, red, maybe that's too romantic. So you default to a color that's maybe more ambiguous and less grounded in a specific meaning. I could see people associating green heart with money. I could see people associating it with just limes. There's all different ways, whatever you associate green and heart, then you can derive its meaning.
That's wonderful. I think about it as sustainable love. So let's just I wanted to talk about if one emoji is a word in a way. I want to talk about how emoji is combined. Compound emoji. I've noticed so many sort of creative ways people sort of communicate, not just with one, but like create a concept around two. Is this something I know you've kind of written about it, but can you tell us about how people form ideas through combinations of emojis?
Yeah, it is no different that we were just talking about, right? Okay, so like people like to play with words, like combine them. They're just like, like if you look at like, I don't know, brunch, breakfast and lunch, and now you have the word brunch, right? People like to mush words together. They like to break them apart. They like to play with words just as much as they like to like be creative with music or art or any other thing. And emoji really are no different. They're kind of a combination of all those things. And so you'll see people use the pleading face and then leftward pointing finger and rightward pointing finger and do this like real kind of pathetic little expression, like please. Or eye, mouth, eye, which has become a meme. It generally means it is what it is.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, and but these are things that, you know, anyways, there's like so many different possibilities for these combinations. I like playing my caterpillar playing saxophone. He looks like he's playing jazz music to my eye. But there's all different ways that you can combine emoji, and there's actually some great work being done that isn't quite published yet around how people interpret the sequences emojis. So do they interpret multiple emoji in a row as the same concept or conflicting concepts or the same person or multiple people? And so we're learning a lot about how people use the emoji. And then also, because I think it's one thing to say like, this is how I intend it to be understood, but to understand it from the receiver's end. How is it being interpreted as well? And that's, I mean, the academic work around emoji is flourishing.
I think there's an academic conference at the end of this week on the 14th and 15th, and I peeked at some papers, and it is definitely fascinating and deep dive nerdy if you are really into it, right? I mean,
yes.
incredible. I noticed one criteria when you are selecting or reviewing proposals is if it cannot be represented by a combination of emoji, then maybe we set that aside. So I don't know, like garbage fire, I don't know what, like some concepts, solar energy, maybe. Maybe I read that